Good day, students. Today we're going to look at another example of adding and subtracting rational expressions. This is on page 29 of book 2 of the ma1026 booklets, practice 5. So let's begin this one. Now the first thing we're going to have to look at is, of course, finding our lowest common denominator, because we are subtracting. And anytime you're adding or subtracting, whether it's just numbers or rational expressions, you have to find the LCD. Now, before we can find an LCD with most rational expressions, or some, I shouldn't say most, we try to factor the denominators. Now, the first one you should see as the difference of two squares. So it's y minus 5 and y plus 5. Okay? Let me just fix that. So y minus 5, y plus 5. Alright, now minus, factoring the second denominator, what do we need? Let's see, it's a simple trinomial. Multiply to give you positive 25, but add to give you negative 10. So they're both negatives. And we'll leave the top as y plus 6. Okay, now, when choosing your LCD, you're trying to make the denominators exactly the same. Okay, now we can see we have a y minus 5 here and a y minus 5 here. However, then I have a y plus 5 here, but I don't have a y plus 5 on the other side. So how do I get a y plus 5 over here? Well, I multiply by y plus 5. Now I have a y plus 5 on both sides, but of course, if I multiply the bottom by it, I must multiply the top by it. Therefore, I'm multiplying by 1, aren't I? Which is not going to change the value of the expression. Just change how it looks. Now, so now I have, let's do our little check again. What do I have now? I got y minus 5, y minus 5, y plus 5, y plus 5. What I don't have, okay, there's another y minus 5 here, and I don't have one of those over here. So I have to make, right, the y minus 5 over there as well. So how do I get that? Well, I multiply this side by y minus 5, and the top also then I have to multiply by y plus or y minus 5. Let me fix that. Y minus 5. Now I can go ahead and simplify because my denominators are exactly the same. So your LCD here, if you wanted to write it out, is going to be y minus 5 times y minus 5 times y plus 5. That way both denominators are exactly the same. Now, you don't have to write that down every time. You can now go to one common denominator. Right? Once you make the denominators the same, you just need to write it once. And on top, what does that become on top? Well, on top you should be able to see on this side a y minus 5 times a y plus 2. Now, be careful with this minus sign again. Minus. Okay? And we got a y plus 6 times y plus 5. We've run into the minus sign, which can cause a little bit more difficulty. And what I'd like to encourage students to do is put in an extra set of brackets. In other words, do the FOIL method or extended distributive property to multiply, then multiply by the minus sign. Okay? So what we're going to do now is multiply these binomials. So on top I get y squared plus 2y minus 5y minus 10. Now you should be comfortable multiplying two binomials. I'll just do it here again on the side. Remember, it's y. Some people call it the FOIL method. Some people call it extended distributive property. You take the y, multiply it by y, take the y, multiply it by 2. Minus 5 times the y minus 5 times the 2, which is what I did there. Minus, now leave in those set of brackets. This one is going to be y times y squared, plus y times 5, 5y, plus 6 times y, plus 5 times 6, of course, is 30. All over our common denominator. I'll rewrite that. Don't be lazy, write it down each time. Okay? Now, let's see if we can tidy up the top. I can see I could add these two here. If if I want it at this stage. You don't have to go, or you can add them after. I'll add them now to get minus 3y minus 10. Now here comes the tricky part. Well, not tricky, you just got to be aware of it. That's like having minus 1 in front and has to be distributed through each sign. So we're going to do that 4 times now. So it becomes minus y squared minus 5y minus 6y minus 30. Everything changes sign. All over again. Your common denominator of y minus 5, y plus 5. It doesn't matter the order, I'll put the minus 5 here. Now, let's see what other terms we can add up. So now I can add this one with this one and this one to get a total of, what's that? It looks like what there? Minus 3, minus 8, minus 14y. Yep, minus 14y. So I got, now the y squared cancels. Let's do those first. Sorry about that. I'll cancel these y squareds. Add up the 3y terms. I get minus 14y minus 40 when I add minus 10. All over my common denominator, y minus 5, y plus 5. 2 minuses and a plus. Now the top has a common factor of minus 2, but I don't think that's going to help us factor any further. I'll take the minus 2 out, left with 7y plus 20. No, nothing will cancel, so that step doesn't help us, so we could have left it as the other step, but I'd like to factor and double check. So there's your final answer for this one. Nothing else cancels. That's number 19 on page 29.